Today on the Criss Cinema Podcast, Dune 2, is Paul Atreides Messiah or false prophet? On the Criss Cinema Podcast.
Two fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all. Never saw each other before. They swap murders. Criss.
Wilson! I'm sorry, Wilson! A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the Criss Cinema Podcast bonus episode. Today, blowing in on our view like the sands of Arrakis is Dune 2, with a deep mythos and stunning entertainment in equal measure. Hi, I'm Aaron Wilson, first-time Dune fan, long-time desert dweller.
And I'm Mark Klobus, longtime Dune fan, very curious to see Villeneuve's vision.
And I'm Julie Coburn. I'm a fairly recent Dune fan, but a huge lover of Dune and the director. And I'm also a part-time film student.
Yeah, we actually took a class together, which is how we met. If you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips from Criss and our sister show, Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/transcendentertainment. That's TRANSCEND entertainment. Today, we'd like to give a special shout out to Matthew Smart, our very first Patreon subscriber. He'll also be our guest in a few months on our Castaway/127 Hours episode. Today's Criss is a single feature, as with all new releases, so let's take a deep dive into the depths of Dune 2. But first, Mark, what media has blown through your view?
Well, lately I've been reading Vinland Saga. My son had read, a student had once gifted me a collected volume and I had read it, and my son had read it, and then he was kind of done with it. But then he's been getting back into it. He's like, Dad, you got to read Vinland Saga. And so I've been reading it so far. It's really quite enjoyable. It's interesting for those who aren't familiar with it. It's a Japanese historical manga. It is set in northwestern Europe in the 11th century, and it's about a young Viking who is attempting to get vengeance for the death of his father at the hands of another Viking who killed him after a duel. So,
oh, nice. That sounds awesome.
It is quite awesome. There's apparently I think it's an anime or a live action show currently that's out on Netflix, so it's helped to raise its profile. But I'm a firm believer, as you know, in enjoying the source material too. So that's why I'm reading it. Okay,
Julie, what have you been watching?
I've been on a unique metaphysical kick lately. So I've been watching a lot of Natasha Lyonne TV shows. Yeah. Actually, no. But so we got really into watching Poker Face as well as Russian Doll. And they don't seem like they would have too much in common, but both kind of deal with using your intuition, trusting your gut instincts sort of deal. And a little bit with Russian, not a little bit, but a lot with Russian Doll. There's a lot of time looping and, kind of exploring timelines and different timelines and warpholes and things like that that you've seen a lot with like Marvel movies lately. So, yeah.
That's what I've been meaning to get into, but it's on that long list of media that I have to approach at some point.
Yeah, Poker Face I loved because growing up I was a huge Murder, She Wrote fan. So it was very much like a modern day Murder, She Wrote TV show style, but with more metaphysics in it. More
metaphysics.
Yeah, more metaphysical.
As opposed to none.
Yeah. As opposed to Angela Lansbury.
Well, she is pretty metaphysical.
She is amazing, yes.
How about you, Aaron? What have you been consuming lately?
Yeah, so mine is much lighter than your guys'. I've been watching a food show called Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix. So it's a really fun show because it's...
Is that the one with Phil Baumgartner?
Rosenbaum, I think is his name.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the writer of Everybody Loves Raymond, and he's really funny. Like, the episode that I was watching was... They based each episode around a city. And this one was Mumbai in India. And it's It was really interesting. Apparently there's like a lot of different cultures meshing in Mumbai. They've got Christianity and Muslims and, of course, Indian people. And one of the places that he went to was actually a Chinese Indian food fusion place. It just sounds very interesting. And he's like, everything here is made up. And then I'm like, isn't everything made up?
Right.
But it was pretty interesting. Everything he tried, he said, was his new favorite. There's a lot of diversity there. And he's like, all this diversity and I'm the only Jew. That was funny. But yeah, so that's what I've been watching. I feel like it pales in comparison to your guys', but yeah.
But we all have in common, of course, Dune Part 2.
Just like always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. Now our review of Dune Part 2.
Well, the first thing that you see when the film begins is you see Princess Yurlin Carino journaling. And I have to say, I really liked what Villeneuve did here, because it's a question that I was asking myself ever since the end of the first movie, or one of the questions, which was, how is he going to start the second movie? And it was interesting. It was a neat way of doing a recap without it being overt or heavy-handed.
Or treading the same territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the standard advice, if you're going to see an immediate follow-up sequel, is to watch the original. And that definitely is true for this movie as well. But for those who, maybe don't have an additional 2.5 hours to spare in their lives.
Yeah, which would include me, because I
yes.
tried to watch the first one beforehand, but ran out of time.
It's a nice way to kind of bring you back up to speed. This is where we are in the story, is that, House Atreides has fallen, House Harkonnen has taken over.
This is great advice for doing exposition. Usually it's a character that doesn't know about it, but this is a character that is telling about it for the first time. So it's a great way to do exposition rather than just having Zendaya or the actor for Paul.
Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, Timothée Chalamet. Rather than having one of those two do it, where it's like, yeah, we know, we saw you do it. It's a good introduction of another character, which brings in the Emperor to her dad, which brings in that higher stakes playing field that we're going to be playing on in this one.
It really does make it, it really is a nice transition in that respect, because in the first movie, the Emperor is in the background. They're referring to the Emperor. They're referring to his involvement very indirectly. And here it's foreshadowing the fact that the Emperor in this one is going to be very much of an active figure in the story at some point. So that was another nice. It goes to how there's so many, to me at least, as just a film viewer rather than a filmmaker, a lot of choices that I really liked and I thought were very smart.
Yeah. And the Emperor was Christopher Walken, right?
Yeah, it was.
I thought that was a
distracting.
weird choice to have Christopher Walken in this movie. I wonder, does anyone know what their motivation for that was?
I don't know.
I think they were looking for like a distinguished actor. When in the original Lynch version, they had Jose Ferrer do it. Mm-hmm. And he is, or was, I should say, an amazing actor, a brilliant actor. And it's also there's also an interesting, if you want, an homage in there as well with using him, but that's neither here nor there. But you have this, I think there was this desire to find an equally distinguished, revered actor to play that role, which is interesting because in the book, the Emperor's not that old. Mm-hmm. And yet they always seem to be, because I guess Emperor, because it's supposed to be this illustrious figure, they have to find some sort of, Oscar-winning actor to stick in that role. I actually thought it would have been really awesome if they'd gotten Patrick Stewart to do it.
Yes.
Because he plays Gurney Halleck in the first one, and it would have been a nice callback. Plus, I'm sure Stewart was game for it because he seems to be game for just about anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Picard show proves that.
Yes, exactly. But then we see Paul and Jessica with the Fremen in the desert, still trying to escape the Harkonnen. That when the film leaves off, it's not as though they've successfully eluded the Harkonnen soldiers. They're still very much being hunted by them. And I just thought that it was fascinating to go from the epic battle that climaxes the first movie with this kind of small scale clash.
Yeah.
and it is so nicely done.
And it's good suspense too. So,
Excellent suspense. For me, I'm sitting there watching. I'm thinking, okay, where is this in the story? And it took me a moment to realize it was that it was still a continuation of the chase. But it was really fascinating to see. You get a nice demonstration as to the power of the Fremen, their effectiveness, how you have these very intimidating looking soldiers, and the Fremen have no problem dispatching them. I also have to say I really like that effect that they have where and you see this periodically in the movie where the Harkonnen, they have to reach a place. They don't exactly fly; they float.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so well done. The way it was, and the fact that it's soundless to me is just just makes it perfect. How they just kind of effortlessly arc up there, and it makes for a very nice contrast when they're being taken out and they're just plop, plop, plop on the ground on the desert floor. So.
Yeah, and the way they did that, it must have been wires, but the part where they're up near the top of the cliff and like they almost float with their belly towards the rocks. I don't know how they did that part. It was really good.
Maybe wires CGI mix. I mean,
yeah,
it looks so good. It had to have been practical. It's just it's hard to imagine, especially given how much dodgy CGI there is nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah.
The idea that there is that they can do something like that and they just choose not to. I prefer to believe it's practical. So yeah, I wouldn't have known it was wires because I mean you don't see any. I mean you don't. There's no.
Well, they paint them out nowadays.
They do such a good job
for a while. They've done that. But
yeah. Some of the things about this film is that it's such a bright film. I mean, they really play up that whole desert element. I mean, there's you have darkness at night, but in the daytime, there's no shadows. There's no. I mean, it's out there to see, and there's no hiding, little details outside of that. But the other thing you see though, and this is also a continuation from the first movie, is you see Paul and Jessica trying to gain the acceptance of the Fremen.
Yeah.
And I really like this because it sets up the dynamic you see in the second part of the movie, which is the idea that Paul is this, could be this prophesied figure. Stilgar has totally bought into the prophecy at a very early stage.
Yeah, there's some great comedy with Stilgar.
Oh, yeah.
He says, "I'm not the prophet," and then he's like, "Oh, we know he's the prophet because he's so humble. It proves that he is the prophet."
Everything Paul did confirmed that he was a prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that they added a little bit of humor to this one because the last one was mostly just serious, but the few comedic elements I think really kind of like made it more approachable for some people.
It really reminded me of Life of Brian, the Monty Python movie. I haven't seen that, but I've seen clips and it gave me that kind of vibe.
I've heard the character of Paul referred to as Space Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, there is a lot to that. And to me, and this is actually one of the things that stood out for me when I was watching it. Herbert's novel is just a goulash of influences. And one of the ones, and this is hardly an original observation, is Lawrence of Arabia. And one of the things that really stood out for me as I was watching it was how the way that Villeneuve broke up the story really emphasizes the influence of Lean's movie, because Lean's movie is the same basic thing. You have this white British officer who goes into the desert. He serves as a rallying figure for these Arabs to resist the domination of an overbearing empire. And how by the end of the movie that they've kicked out that empire, but now you're seeing the imposition of a new, different sort of dominance represented by Lawrence's figure. And it's that thread is part of Herbert's novel, but when you lop off the first half, it pretty much is the same basic arc.
Yeah.
Complete with the bad guys flying in planes and taking trains, and how the rebels are blowing up the trains and disrupting economic activity. I mean, it's right there. So Herbert was many things. Purely original was one of them.
Yeah.
Even though he did manage to in the goulash create, really kind of elevate science fiction writing to a new level.
Well, and also add, I'm glad you brought up Lawrence of Arabia, because I finally recently saw that this last year.
Not too many spoilers, please.
No, but I was just amazed at how there's such a lack of the epic, right? Like they used to back in, the early days of film up until like the 60s and 70s, I think. Would have these epics, right? They were like hours long movie. Yeah. You'd spend the day with the family, go to see it. Everyone was talking about it. It was always like nominated for films. And Lawrence of Arabia is one of the most famous like epic films. And I feel like Dune 1 and 2 is kind of helping like reinvigorate the epic. Oh yeah. And it's very modern.
You might be able to throw Oppenheimer in there.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like Ben-Hur or like
that type of stuff.
Ten Commandments, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally you'll see those crop up. Like, I mean, arguably, I would put Dances with Wolves in there. Gandhi would be another one. But I think that, I mean, the amount of investment that's required nowadays is just so huge. And I think studios seem to have priced that when you're talking about science fiction. They just assume that, to have, alien space bats and flying saucers, we're already talking at least 100 million right there. So why not? Now we're going to have to put in an additional 50 million just because in order to, make it all look good enough to where people are going to spend $500 million or $1 billion to go see it, which apparently this movie's on track to do. So,
well, it's a good time to bring up the way he handles like I'm sure mountain of mythos in this world is just amazing. Like you don't even feel like you're getting exposition. Like, well, to compare it to something else, the original Dune, the David Lynch one is constant exposition, and you don't pick up any of it.
Yeah.
It's this one. It just like, I don't know. They must do it in the world building. And I didn't really ever consciously, and I'm a writer, like my brain didn't switch into, now they're doing exposition mode. It seemed to just, and it's so lightly streamed in there that you just get the world. I was overwhelmed going into it thinking, am I going to be able to understand this? And I had no problem. So,
and I think you have an excellent example of this in the next part of the story when they're told that the Reverend Mother for the Fremen is dying and that they want Jessica to be the new one. So you have to learn about the water of life and taking it. And parts of that are not revealed actually till later when they show how exactly they get the water of life, that poison, that mind expanding poison that they have to take to become Reverend Mothers. But you are kind of told what it is. You're told what she has to do for it and how it will make her the next Reverend Mother. And it doesn't feel like, okay, now we're going to spend 2 minutes explaining the mythology here before we actually get to her taking it and experiencing it. And of course, there's that vital story component, which is that because she's pregnant, her unborn daughter receives it as well.
Yeah, that shot of the blue poison just going over the fetus is like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was really unique choice. I've not seen that much in other movies before like that. That was a
just
really
those
unique
shots
choice.
of the fetus. It's like, wow, like I would not have thought of that. There's multiple shots where it's almost like an Oppenheimer thing where they visualize the molecular worlds, but it's like, okay, there's the fetus. And then I think there was other stuff like they show the poison going through her veins. And then I'm sure there was another part where if I remember it, I'll point it out. But, yeah.
But right there it's world building, but it's so lightly done that it seems perfectly natural.
Yeah.
In a way that so much of it is not. But and of course it's such an important part of the story, and which is that now we have this happening. And this actually gets to one of the things that for me was a very significant difference from the source material, which is that the second half of the novel takes place over a period of about 2, 3, 4 years. And and this is where I actually was very grateful for the incorporation of the pregnancy, is that it helps to give a sense of the time constraint, which is or the time span. Which is that, I mean, the whole all the events of of this film take place in about 7 or 8 months, and that kind of bothers me a bit. But at the same time, it's kind of like he makes so many other choices that I like that I have to kind of give him I have to accept the ones that he does, because I figure he had to make all sorts of choices in order to take this enormous amount of source material, which in a different context justified a miniseries, to say, well, I guess we're going to have to, condense it down to still 2.5 hour long movie on top of another 2.5 hour long movie.
Yeah.
So. But it really does aid the acceptance of Paul and Jessica into the Fremen that Jessica does this.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how at this point, Paul couldn't give, we're going to talk about Arrakis in the future. So we're going to say he couldn't shed a tear because we know how important shedding tears are. He couldn't shed a tear for the prophecy and everything. He just wants to basically weaponize the Fremen into a tool with which to hit the Harkonnen. Mm-hmm. And I like that because you had this nice discussion that's interwoven into the movie of Paul is rejecting the visions, but he's also rejecting the role, not necessarily not just because he's terrified, but because that's what he wants. What he wants is he wants revenge. And this gets to this interesting question, is he a hero or is he an anti-hero? Mm-hmm. And the writer probably can answer that better than I can, because I still, in my mind, am trying to sort out what an anti-hero is.
Yeah, I didn't quite pick up on the revenge part, so yeah, I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it, but I read it as standard hero until, and I haven't read the books, but just for my watching of it, it's like standard hero up till the point that he decides to become their messiah, and then things take a really dark turn.
Boy, did they.
Yeah.
And that, of course, gets to something that is another very significant difference that we'll probably get into in a little bit, which is the presence of Chani. Mm-hmm. Now, how did you guys feel about the chemistry of their relationship?
I felt it was really fast, the development of their relationship. Once you get into it, you buy it. But for a 3-hour movie, like even that, it felt like their relationship, at least the beginning of it, went really fast.
I felt like it had kind of been building since the first movie. Mm-hmm. Like you could kind of feel some chemistry between them and some tension. So I think this was just kind of like the culmination of it. But then the other thing that I kept noticing was he kept telling her, I'll love you till my last breath or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why does he keep repeating that? Yeah. So then when it happened, at the twist at the end, it was like, oh, okay, I get it now. He's setting her up to be basically turn on her or admit to her that they may not be able to be together in the long run, but he still loves her anyway.
And that was something that Villeneuve does that's different from the novel, which I really like, which is that in Herbert's novel, Chani goes along with it. Mm-hmm. She accepts all this stuff. She is willing to accept the fact that that Atreides has to marry someone else in order to cement his political power, and that she'll always be first in his heart, but she will never be his one and only. And that they make her more resistant and resistant in part because she's a skeptic. She never loses that skepticism. There's a whole dynamic of faith here, and Villeneuve does something that is different than Herbert that I think really adds to the conversation in a very in a good way. But she in the same way that you have with couples, mm-hmm. that you can love someone, and yet you can also at the same time be like, yeah, you're full of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's Chani. I mean, Zendaya, I think, does a good job of saying, of communicating that she loves Paul, that her character loves Paul. But I totally bought her, both her love for him and her growing skepticism and resistance to this role that he ends up embracing.
Yeah, I got the vibe that she's, as much as she loves him, she loves her people more, mm-hmm. and she'd be willing to do more for them than in the long run than she would for him, or at least protect them. That, which I think comes from that skepticism. She's like, I've seen a lot of crazy things happen to my people, You might be one of them. I love
Yeah.
you, but you might be one of the crazy things that happens to my people, and I'm a little standoffish because of that.
And I think that's where the time compression that Villeneuve does of the events of the second half of the book actually plays into this. To this, which is that if they had been in a relationship for 3-4 years, it may have been more implausible. But it's like, 6 months, I can see someone, people, your love can happen quickly. It could be a rush, but at the same time, you still have enough of your pre-relationship identity there where you can be a little skeptical about it. You haven't really kind of made that all-in commitment. And so I can see her kind of, as much as she loves being torn by the fact that you're right, that she's kind of like, yeah, I'm getting off the crazy train at this point.
Yeah, her character was really what pulled me through on this one. If she had have gone on the train with everybody else, like even the guy that was not a Fremen, that
Gurney Halleck,
his teacher, he jumps on board too at the end, and it's like that was kind of quick, I felt, but just her resistance to that was what pulled me through. And there's very much, we'll get there when we get there, but her attitude at the end is what carries you through. And there is a character handoff, like we talked about in the Psycho episode. The main character doesn't actually die, but he becomes very dark, and it's like, you're not going to want to have sympathy for this character. So we jump over to the Chani train. So
see, I don't know if Gurney bought into it as much as it was like he was kind of an ends justify the means kind of guy. And it's like, apart from Paul and Jessica, nobody had more desire for vengeance, for personal vengeance than Halleck. And that's why, and I was thinking of the scene where Paul embraces it in front of the Southern Fremen, and he's Chani's standing there, and it's Gurney Halleck who's pulling her down, and he's not doing it in like a worshipful way. He's like, sort of shut up and let this happen because we're going to need these people if we're going to take out the Harkonnen. He doesn't care. For him, it's still all just religious mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting commentary there about how so often you have in, religious history, you have outside forces which were like, I don't believe what you believe, but I'm perfectly willing to weaponize it towards my own ends.
Yes.
Like, for example, Islam in Afghanistan in the 1980s, we're going to go ahead and support these people because they're opposition to this godless empire. So we're going to take advantage of their commitment to their faith and use it because we happen to share those ends, even if we don't share the faith. And that seemed to be Halleck. He's like, I'm just, going along to get along, hoping for my chance. And here it comes. And I trust Paul. That's where his loyalty is. It's to Paul Atreides. It's not to I apologize for mispronouncing it, the Kiswaj Harditch or whatever that role was that he assumed. And he's willing to go along with that. So I think about that in that final scene in the throne room, where he's still referring to him as kind of like my liege, and he's still using the old, the ducal, the respect titles. So,
Well, the other thing I liked going along with that is that they pointed out several times how the prophecy was kind of pushed along by people like Paul's mother, or like the people who, what was the group that Paul's mother's a part of? The
Bene Gesserit.
There we go. Yeah. He's like, but they came up with a prophecy. They pushed us along. Doesn't it, seem a little convenient that...
Okay, so this is complete side joke. But I kept hearing that as Ben and Jerry's. I'm like, oh, they worship ice cream. Anyway.
Speaking of which, I wonder if there's a Dune related flavor in Ben and Jerry's right now.
That would be good. Yeah.
But I think that gets to and this gets to one of the reasons why Herbert's novel is the classic it is that there, among the richness of it is there's this great religious commentary that runs throughout it. It's not just this novel; it's really the entire series. Because the Bene Gesserit endure throughout the entire series in a way that a lot of the other elements that you're introduced to in this novel don't. So, but we see Paul adapting, and you see this most dramatically with his his eagerness to embrace the Fremen ways. And you get a nice development of that. And I like the fact that it's not a montage as such. At least I didn't think it was. You're seeing him gradually learning it step by step, and how he's learning how to fight the Fremen way. And they do that nice callback to the first movie where his father's talking about desert power and how we're going to fight the ways of the desert. And in a sense, Paul is becoming of Arrakis and in a sense, championing that cause because he knows he can't defeat Harkonnen the way that the Atreides normally might have tried to because those tools are gone. Although he finds out later, well, they actually have some of the tools still left over. We're going to use those. But he's going to instead use the Fremen ways, but he is going to use his knowledge of the Harkonnen to make them even more effective. And that's where you get this notion of, well, I guess the Fremen needed the white savior to step in and tell them how it should be done.
The white false messiah.
The white false messiah, which in a way he's already beginning to exploit this role, even though he is trying to reject all of its implications. But he's perfectly willing to, he is like, I don't accept what you see of me, Stilgar, but I'm willing to take your loyalty and use that to make myself, part of your group. I mean, I appreciate his modesty. I appreciate the fact that he's still willing to learn. You have that nice little, cute aside where he's off in the desert and Chani, follows him. So because he's like, oh, you're doing the sand walking all wrong, and I'm going to teach you all that, and that was really nicely done. The way that they do the assimilation, even though you could argue the time frame's a little compressed, it is nicely done. It's not all of a sudden they all bow down and like, oh, you're the thing. You see a process of how they sell Paul. And of course, it's like, we got to sell them to the northern tribes first. The southern tribes will go along with it very quickly because, they're fanatics. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And I like that they set up that he's not going to the south. And he says that several times. And then when things get tough and it's the only choice that he has, he finally crosses his line. Yeah. And he goes very dark after that.
He does. It's kind of like, if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go all in. And he really embraces. And that, I think that's where you start to see Chani, who's really kind of fallen in love with Paul Muad'Dib, freedom fighter, is as much into Paul Kiswachardach, the savior, especially since she's probably seen him naked. But we also get the Harkonnen, and you're seeing that line being developed as well. And this is one of the things that kind of really pains me is how underused. I'm trying to remember the actor's name here, Dave Bautista is.
Oh yeah,
because I so love him as the Beast Raban. He is so good as this. I mean, like all the Harkonnen, he's psychotic, but he sells the fear so well. He sells the frustration so well. And I would have loved to have seen more of him trying to stay on top of something that is so clearly beyond his abilities. Yeah. He's kind of like, he's just constantly screaming, the rats. He's like, he just wants to stomp them under his foot, and he just does not know how to do it. And you had that great sequence where they think they've got the Fremen. He goes out there with all his forces, and they're in the desert, and then they're all getting wiped out. And at the very end, he is just terrified. He's like running back to the ornithopter, and he's trying to get on. And there's the Fremen who follows him, who ends up falling off as the ornithopter's flying away. But nonetheless, it's this idea that he just sells it so well. This idea of he's this bully and this thug and this brute who is so out of his depth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's apparently upon him that Harkonnen control over Arrakis rest, and he just does such a bad job of it. But of course, it's by design, because you get the Baron, who's Stellan Skarsgård, is just so. It's interesting contrast with the original movie, where the actor, and I can't remember the actor who plays him, he is very over the top. Yeah. He's very bombastic. And Skarsgård is more just like, this cool, calculating slug. And you see it like when he's presiding over the birthday celebrations for Fade Routha. And he's like, let's see how he does with this. Mm-hmm. And this is this nephew that he has I would argue a very inappropriate fondness for. You get the impression it's not just the fondness of an uncle for a nephew, but there might be something else going on there. Because Fade Routha he's handsome, he's buff, he's Austin Butler. Let's face it.
In the books, do they give more of a background about their race? Because, like, how does the Baron become what he's become, and like, why is he always hooked up to machines and going in the pool?
Well, that's overindulgence. He basically has he's kind of this id.
Mm-hmm.
He's consumed to the point where he needs machinery to get around. You see it at the end when
Mm-hmm.
the solder cars slice him for the machinery, and he can't walk. He can only crawl. So he always has to be in he has to be sort of suspended in liquid, or he has to be suspended by machines. But without that, he cannot get around.
And what is the liquid? Is that, like, I was told by a friend who went to see the movie with me, they had shot a lot of those scenes in infrared, so that's why a lot of the stuff.
Oh, no, there's one scene. I'll point it out when we get there.
Yeah.
But what is the pool that he's always going in? What is that? Does anyone know what the substance is supposed to be,
like,
or why
what it is in the story, or what it actually is?
Yeah, well, both. Like,
I don't know either.
I must confess, I don't know.
Like, well, I'll make a joke here real quick. When I first saw the Duke in the bath, I'm like, I leaned over to my brother Josh, and I'm like, "That's you," because he'd actually said before when the Duke was in the chair, and you could see all of his girth sticking out, like his whole big belly up front, and he's going along. He leaned over, and he's like, "That's you." I'm like, no. So anyway, but he thought it was oil. But I don't think it's oil.
Too. But I was like, why would he be in oil?
You know what else it looks like? Looks like blood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of gets to he's so much like a parasite. And this is something that Villeneuve does that I think really is a great design choice. It's when you are on Getty Prime and those outdoor shots. Oh my gosh, that photography is so amazing. And you know why it's all in black and white like that?
Yeah, it's infrared cameras. It's not visible light.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same stuff that they use for like police helicopters when they're following suspects, and you can see the white of the suspect going through there. Anyway, so their face is glowing from the heat that it's putting off. That's why their faces are so white.
Oh.
And it's done that way because Getty Prime is orbiting a black sun.
Okay.
Oh,
And so that's their visible spectrum. It makes everything
That makes sense.
look black and white.
Okay.
Yeah, because I must confess, when I first saw it, I thought they were like wearing this. It was some sort of ritual thing. They were all wearing powder, but then I realized, wow, it's a lot of powder for the entire crowd. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's because of the unique, very surreal lighting.
Yeah.
Of natural lighting of Getty Prime. So
And now that I think about it, they must have been using infrared lights, which are basically heat lamps,
yeah,
for lighting them. Because when you do normal infrared light, it's like the human glows, but the environment is pretty dark. Anything that puts off heat, so they'd have to bring in their own heat lamps basically to light it. I don't know. I'm just assuming, but that's. From the way it looks, like that's probably what they had to do.
Is their race supposed to be cannibals, or is it just the guy and his
they're
nephew?
humans.
Yeah.
So they're not so much a race as they are basically a house that has really kind of leaned into sadism.
Okay.
And I think that there is that Fade Routha, his little bevy of sharp toothed women. I think they are cannibals, but I think that's more underscoring Fade Routha's psychoticness, just in the same way that Harkonnen, when we first see him in this movie, it's after he's killed two of his attendants just because it pleased him to do so or whatever. So
yeah, it does very much seem like they're another race. So that's interesting. I mean, they're very pale, and poor Dave Bautista has to put on like different color paints for whatever roles he's playing. Like the other one is Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. And
there's actually an interesting note there I was going to bring up a little bit later about that role, but we'll save it for then. So,
okay.
But you get the idea that Harkonnen is, they're doing what they're doing in Arrakis, and they kind of have the Emperor compromised, because of the support that he provided to help them overthrow Atreides. But they're, they're making something of a botch. They got to get spice production up, and the Fremen are thwarting this. And then you see that discussion with the Bene Gesserit. And the sense that the Bene Gesserit, they're trying to manipulate this game, and for them, the Harkonnen are a tool. So that's where you get the Bene Gesserit goes to Getty Prime during Fade Routha's birthday celebration and seduces him, and she's impregnated by him, and this idea that it was just kind of there's something going on there too. This idea that she kind of recognizes he's psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
We can control him. She's saying that she can control him. You could tell she does not like this guy. Who does?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, again, kudos to Austin Butler because it's such a well done role. But it's like this guy is just, oh my gosh, he's just horrible.
Yeah.
But she's like, if need be, our plan B is, if we can't, control it through, Paul, then we're going to do Fade Routha, and we're going to enable the psychotic to get there because he's a useful tool.
Yeah.
And we're going to use, what was it? Flattery and sex to control him. I can't remember what two things but it's basically along those lines. They're going to use they're going to basically manipulate this guy so that they're actually the ones running the show. And this of course gets to like this, we see a reference to this first movie about how there's this great vision that they're leading to, and they're trying to do their best to control things without actually being seen to be in control. But we go back to Arrakis, and the rebellion is well underway, and then you get to see the fact that it's not just the Harkonnen that are doing the spice mining; it's the smugglers, and among them is Gurney Halleck.
Yeah,
and I love the way they reintroduce.
Yeah, me too. It was good. And I love just to note before you spend most of the time on Arcanis before you even go off planet again with the intercutting. Mm-hmm. And I love that choice of just because it puts you in Paul's shoes, and I can't remember the mom's name.
Jessica.
Yeah, Paul and Jessica's shoes, where you are among the Fremen and you are getting to know their ways, and you're not really thinking about the other things that are out there. It's all about the sandworms and learning to ride and the sand walking and all the things that you have to do in the desert. Mm-hmm. And then they bring in the bigger story later on. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way of reinvesting you in your protagonist. Yeah. Before you really pick up the story. I didn't really appreciate that. You're right. That is, again, it's a very masterful touch. Yeah. In a way that, in like so many other ones, it's like, previously on Dune, and you just kind of do this recap. You just assume that we're going to go ahead and carry it from there on. So. Yeah. But with Gurney and his reunion with Paul, you have the reintroduction of the family atomics. Mm-hmm. And this means that Paul now has the ability to throw nukes at Harkonnen and really mess with and really disrupt things. Mm-hmm. But of course, this is also when Fade Routha goes in to take over from Raban. And this is all part of the Baron's plan because his affection, let's put it that way, for Fade Routha is such that he basically sets up his one nephew to fail so the other one can succeed. And then Fade Routha comes in and he demonstrates a more effective ruthlessness where he I don't know how they found the refuge of the North Fremen, but they basically just shell it into rubble. And then there's that Chani's friend who stays behind, and they capture her, and Fade Routha burns her to death. Yeah. It's kind of like, we're going to really underscore how evil this guy is. Yeah. And it's like, he could have done so many things, and I'm just going to go, I got this flamethrower. The beautiful thing is they don't actually show it happening, but it's happening. Yeah. So.
I think that's the thing about the Harkonnen is that the thing I've noticed about between the two movies, they seem to have lost their humanity and become this almost race of people who are sociopaths and psychopaths. It's like, what would happen if you just bred sociopaths and psychopaths? That would be them, basically.
But we're seeing now how we're getting to the, Paul's being kind of boxed in because the Harkonnen, by somehow succeeding in crushing the Northern Fremen, are forcing him to go south. He needs reinforcements. The only reinforcements that are available are the fanatics. And so he has to not only go and embrace this role, he has to embrace his destiny, take the water of life, and have all these visions which point him towards what he needs to do. And he does it. And it's so, I mean, this for me is not my favorite part of the movie, but it is, I think, very well done. It's just kind of like, we're kind of have to, walk through what he's doing to get us to where he wants to go and where we know we're going to end up, which is that final confrontation.
Yeah. This is where I felt I wasn't really paying attention to the act structure, which my dad was, weirdly enough. I've rubbed off on him, I guess. But this is like just lengthwise. I felt like, okay, this is about where it should end. We got another half hour of the third act, this big battle. And I'm like, I kind of wasn't down for it. I'm like, I want to be done, like I was for Oppenheimer as well. But it pulled me back in though. So it was good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's basically half hour of pure action sequences.
Yeah.
You have the destruction of the shield wall. You have the sandworms coming in. You have the solder car, who's supposed to be the toughest soldiers in the galaxy, who are just, completely owned by the sandworms and the Fremen. It's not even a contest. And that gets us to, from a storytelling perspective, what you really want, which is all the principals confronting each other.
Yeah.
You've got the Baron, you've got the Emperor, you've got Paul, you've got Stilgar, you've got Chani, and they're all in the same room.
Yeah, you pull it all together.
Yeah. And well, first, of course, you have, though, with the destruction of the Harkonnen forces, you have Beast Raban's death. And how he's trying to, again, doing what he does best, which is running for the Ornithopter. But he is stopped by Gurney Halleck, who kills him. And I have to wonder if this is an in-joke, because let's go back to Marvel and how Batista played Drax, and he's killed by Gurney Halleck, is played by Josh Brolin. Who did Josh Brolin play?
Yeah.
He's Thanos. Yeah. And of course, and so once again, we see Thanos killing Drax.
I didn't even make that connection.
Can't get a break.
Yeah.
His destiny is constantly killed by Josh Brolin in every movie they're in together.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's a little insider joke for them now. They're like, well, what are we going to kill each other in next time?
Yeah, and maybe at this point that might be casting directors. If we're gonna have two characters, one's gonna kill the other, we're casting one of them in one of these roles, and we gotta reach out to the agent of the other to bring him in. It's gonna be the recurring theme.
Yeah, poor Dave Bautista is gonna get the same reputation as what's his name, Sean.
Oh, Sean Bean.
Sean Bean, yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of it, he's another one that Villeneuve likes to kill, because he does it also in Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, okay.
Beginning sequence when Gosling's character goes and finds him in at that greenhouse farm, and he kills him in that one too. So poor Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
So, but you get the confrontation, and it's not. I mean, it's kind of there's a bit of stage setting for the next film that's being promised, but what I really liked about it, and this is where you really see the difference, is you see just how far Chani is getting alienated from Paul.
Yeah. And
I gotta confess, I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, I so wish Herbert had thought of that, because and this is where I'm wondering how far Villeneuve's going to deviate in Dune Messiah from the source material, because it strikes me as so fascinating to see how Chani becomes so disaffected, and not because she's on the outs, not because she's alienated, but out of love. And it's just like it sets it up in so wonderful.
Yeah, it's not the man she fell in love with.
Yeah.
And okay. So now that we're here, I love the way that they play it out of they perfectly and seamlessly hand off the main character role to Chani. And you're in that room where they're all bowing to him, and she's the only one not bowing and talking, and or she shouldn't be talking. And you just start following her basically. And your allegiances more and more align with hers than they do with Paul's. And then by the end, you're following her through the camera of she's the only one doing the sandworm thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's about to jump on the sandworm, and you're fully on board with her.
Yeah.
And Paul's kind of the opposing side now, basically.
And it's because she's the only one that's true to the Fremen goal, because they've liberated Arrakis. And what is Paul doing? He's telling all the Fremen, get on board these spaceships. We're now going to go fight the Great Houses. and these Fremen, to a person, are like, yeah, okay. They've gone from being freedom fighters to being basically, Paul's loyal army. Mm-hmm. And which is true to the source, but nonetheless, it really kind of gets to how far by doing that with Chani, it really emphasizes how Paul has effectively used his role to so co-opt the Fremen to his goals, where it's no longer about making Arrakis for the Fremen. It is now about the Fremen becoming the oppressors, mm-hmm. which. Spoiler, which you did announce, they end up doing in the subsequent volumes. So,
yeah. See, it's interesting that it's like we were saying, it might play out differently in the third movie than it does in the third book. Or is it the third book? Or
it's the second book.
Okay, well, whichever part that it covers the same material in the books.
Yeah,
I thought it was also interesting how they kept introducing the sister. Of Paul and is in the mom's womb, especially with the dream at the end. Toward the end of the movie, anyway, where he's talking to her like as if it's in the future, or he can already see what she's going to potentially look like. And
that's the Water of Life, about how it's kind of this consciousness expanding, mm-hmm. Thing where they've basically, he not only can see the past, he can see the future, and because Aaliyah's been exposed to it as well, I guess he can have that interaction with her. I question their choice. I mean, no shade on the actress. Do we want to spoil who the actress is?
Yeah,
I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know
spoilers.
if I like the choice for the actress. I feel like she's like the it girl right now, and she's in everything, and I can't figure it out.
Anna Taylor-Joy is the actress.
Well, it's not that. It's that fact that by the time they are going, and again, Villeneuve, I think, has already kind of in his mind knows what he wants to do with mm-hmm. Dune Messiah, mm-hmm. but where her age at that point is more appropriate for the third novel, which would be a later film, which Villeneuve says he's not going to make. Mm-hmm. Because Dune Messiah, when that takes place, Paul's children, which he has with I want to say the princess. I can't remember. I think one of them. I think he has it with the princess. No, he has. Sorry, it's been a while since I read the books, but they're still kids, and it's in the third book where they are where they're young adults and they basically assume their roles. So Anna Taylor-Joy, the age that you see her is appropriate for a characterization that, as written in the novels, is not going to happen in the next movie. Mm-hmm. So either Villeneuve is really going to do a radical departure in terms of time from the second novel, or he's going to have someone play her as a young person, in which case this is the only time we're going to see Anna Taylor-Joy playing, which is pure stunt casting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
And I have no idea what you guys are talking about from the other books, or from the book. Okay, so now our star ratings. Mark, we'll start with you.
Well, my policy, I don't do half stars. Yeah. So if it's between 4 and 5, I got to give this 5 stars.
Cool.
What I'm looking forward to is when I think you see the inevitable theatrical pairing and do dual showings. I would love to sit down and attend those. Yeah. It's going to be an endurance contest.
Mm-hmm. Especially that first movie. Like, my brother pointed this out, and I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a first act put into just one movie. Or like a whole movie of first act, and nothing really happens until the big attack at the end. And it's like nothing attack. And they are giving exposition, but for an entire movie, it doesn't make much of a movie feel of a journey.
I'd say 4.5 out of 5, only because there were a few times where I felt like it was a little too lengthy, and they could have cut some of it down if they had just sped up some of. They did a whole lot of like worm travel scenes that I was like, was this really necessary to have this many? Or a lot of slow glances that could have been either cut out or like sped up a little bit that could have made it a little bit faster. But I liked the first one, I think, a little bit better just because it felt like a bit of an adventure, and it was like almost felt like two different movies in one. You know, with the beginning being kind of like setting up the world, and then the rest of it was just kind of battling and action and setting up for the second movie. This one, though, I felt like it progressed a whole lot of the story, and you can kind of get like a little bit of a background and setting up the future. But I don't know, it just was a little too long for me, I think.
Yeah, my review is almost exactly the same as yours, Julie. 4.5 stars, and I didn't realize why it was a half, but probably for length. I also really love the comedy from Javier Bardem.
Yes.
And that was much needed for the subject matter they're dealing with. It's like, add a bit of levity to this, and it's a nice balance.
And that's very much a Villeneuve contribution. That Herbert does not, use Cigar for comedic purposes like that. In his book. So, and it was a very astute choice, I'd say, because I did enjoy it, especially in the sense that it was true to the character.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he suddenly became slapsticky and was, doing like a Jerry Lewis, like, wow.
It's the greatest comedy is just done through character of just like, I'm going to start doing short films, and the one big note I'm going to give to the actors is do not try to be funny. Like, just play the character straight, and the truth of the character, whoever that character is, informs the comedy, because that's where the comedy comes from. Like, the reason it's so funny is because he's such a strong believer in this thing that he makes all these statements trying to glaze over everything that makes him seem human to be like he is the Messiah. And
again, Life of Brian is a great parallel. Everything he does is proof.
Yeah, for sure. And I need to watch that whole movie.
Yes.
But, so that is our review of Dune 2. If you like what you've heard on today's episode and you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips from Criss and our sister show, Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Transcend Entertainment. That's TRANSCEND Entertainment. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Criss Cinema Podcast.
You wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.